All the second stage tanks now pressurized. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with bite.
Hello and welcome to HBR Talk 406, way down under the accountability gap. I am here with Richard the Lionhearted. We are going to start on time, or at least as close as we can. It's Badger time, so 7:08 is 7 o'clock, because whammon are always late. But Lauren and Mike are not here yet, because Mike has been traveling, and so they may be a bit of a distance from home, and they may not be here for another 10 or 20 minutes. So that's the whole group. Brian Martinez is still working in the background to make everything happen, and you'll see Mike and Lauren pop in when they get on Discord. But before we get into the show, we got to do what we got to do. As always, Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions. And as experiences both recent and long past have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They've made it clear that for people like us relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice, or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. In light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platforms tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com/justthetip. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, which is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. And before we actually get into the video, I do have a super chow. Let me clear some unnecessary things from the screen at this point. And we have Winter gave us $10 and said, been listening to the interview tonight of Hannah with Paul Elam. Great interview. Thank you. And I will thank you for telling me that and for the $10. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it's been a long time since I've actually gotten to be on a stream with Paul, and it was really cool getting to watch his opener. It was kind of the same stuff I've been talking about, so it's funny. We still end up sounding fairly close to the same at a distance, because the issues are the same throughout the men's rights movement, and everybody's talking about the same things. And so the ideas and the thoughts really do remain consistent. But it is an interview you'd have to listen to hear the whole thing. I'm not going to be able to go over what happened and what was discussed. So I would encourage everybody to check out Paul's channel and check out his X account as well, and give you a little more access there. And if you look him up, you should be able to find it pretty easily, because I ended up having to do that because I couldn't remember the name of the channel after all the overtime in the last 3 months about don't remember my name. So now I'm going back a little bit on the video. We're going to watch a little bit of what we watched at the end last week. And I know we haven't gotten extremely far on this, but it is, this sort of all goes together, so I kind of want you to hear it together, this part, if that makes sense. I don't want you to have part of it left behind in last week and not be immediately on your mind when you hear the next part. So that's why I'm starting back a little bit. Anybody that is joining us from my invite on Paul's show. Definitely when I upload the video, you'll want to see the whole thing. But this part that's upcoming is really the meat of this video. And there'll be more to it, but my aha moment is in the middle of this. So, although I think I already said aha in the video earlier. But let's take a look. The accountability gap is natural. Okay, that means, to a degree, it is in women's nature to be less accountable than men, and to focus on different considerations when they do exercise accountability. It's at least, to some degree, a trait of female psychology that manifests in a fixed, unlearned way, regardless of cultural or other environmental changes. In other words, it's like an instinct, or rather, accountability itself is the instinct, and it's both slightly stronger and more comprehensive in men. But so I think this is pretty close to where I stopped last week. And what I want to point out about this is there was a knockdown drag-out fight on X over whether gynocentrism is biological or not. And gynocentrism is based on cultural principles, right? Storge is probably biological. There's probably an instinct to treat your family, the people that you live with and the people that you take care of and who take care of you, as a more special and important group of people than strangers or even people you know but who aren't part of your family. I don't think that that's taught culturally. I think that's just other animals do that as well. That's just something that would evolve over time simply because it is a survival strategy. But I don't think treating women as if they're especially important in comparison to the whole rest of the population is a good survival strategy. I think that that's something that actually would cause more death. And case in point, we do that today. We treat women like they are of the utmost importance. Their rights trump everybody else's rights. Their wants trump everybody else's rights. Their fears trump everybody else's rights. They can steal through the government, and they can kill and get away with it. And right now, the population is kind of under threat of not expanding at a fast enough rate that young people will be around to take care of old people when they're too old to take care of themselves. And part of the reason for that is that 3 out of every 10 babies that are conceived worldwide right now are being aborted. They're getting killed before they're born by the mother's choice. In elective abortions, that's not counting abortions that are done to prevent the death of the mother, which those babies are going to die anyway. They only do abortion to prevent the death of the mother if it's too late or too early to save the baby. Either the baby's already dead from something and sepsis is happening, or you can't make it to premature birth before the baby's going to die. And if you try, it's also going to kill the mother. Like maybe tubal pregnancies and stuff like that. But in fact, it's all elective. It's all elective abortion based not on health concerns or having been raped, which I would still personally call an elective abortion. Even though you didn't elect to get raped, you're still electing to kill the child who didn't rape you. And it is all just a feminist choice, just a women's choice. So gynocentrism really isn't promoting life if it has convinced women to do that. It's taken women it put women in a situation where instead of wanting to promote life and wanting to take care of people and wanting to help people, they're making the most selfish choices they can. And They're not getting involved with men. They're not getting married. They're not trying to be partners with men. So I don't think that's a survival strategy. I think that's a mistake. And if you look back in history, everything that people talk about as gynocentrism is focus on their family or focus on their children. And you don't necessarily have to prioritize women to do those things. So I was on the side of gynocentrism it's not natural, right? Storge is natural. Gynocentrism is a bastardization of that prioritizes women instead of the whole family. But what I'm about to explain here tells a different story with regard to accountability and the accountability gap. And this is why it's not specifically connected or reliant is a better term. It's connected, but it's not specifically reliant on gynocentrism. You could eliminate gynocentrism entirely, and there would still be some accountability gap. And the reason is about to play in the video. How and why? After all, personal accountability is a necessary component of success in life. Characteristics like mindfulness, diligence, and perseverance rely on it. Why would half of a species that survives mainly due to its ability to outsmart nature using those and similar characteristics be designed with weaker minds and less ability to exercise them? It sounds kind of unreasonable to suggest that merely by virtue of having an innie instead of an outie, women are just naturally a bit off in the head. Sorry ladies, curse of the vajayjay, you get shafted in the brain department. Sucks to be you. Probably because that both is and is not the case. Remember, personal agency is a person's control over his own actions and his sense of connection to their consequences. Personal accountability is ownership of that factor. Acceptance that a person's control over his own actions makes him responsible for them, and that sense of connection to their consequences means accepting that the consequences of your own choices are your fault, and it's your responsibility to deal with them. If you make a decision, and you take accountability for that decision, you are taking on the responsibility to follow through with it even if having to do so becomes undesirable. And you are taking a chance that if the outcome is also undesirable, you will be guilty of causing that consequence, and it will be your responsibility to mitigate it. That guilt can be as simple as self-criticism, or it can involve others judging you, and even penalties should your decision lead to consequences that affect another person. I just want to point out how afraid feminists are of being judged. Like, you can't even suggest that a behavior is itself is not always good for women. Not even that it's a bad or immoral or harmful behavior, just women don't benefit from this behavior, and it might actually be an unwise choice when women make these choices. And it doesn't matter what it is you're talking about. It doesn't have to be sexual. It can be. But the minute you say that, any women who make those choices or have made those choices and face some consequences and blame them on somebody else, they come out of the woodwork, right, to accuse you of misogyny and talk about how you're just wanting to bash women, you're just wanting to judge women. All it takes is to say something like, if you really want to ensure that your daughter's future is going to be lucrative, that she's going to be in a stable environment and everything, get her to start a job in high school, save up some money, have a down payment so she can get a house after she has worked for, the last 2 years of high school and maybe 4 years after that. And the first thing that you get is, why should women be responsible for this? Why shouldn't this be something that the couple does together? Are you advocating dowry? It doesn't even matter that it's not a sexual thing, right? You're not suggesting, gosh, you should be careful who you sleep with so you don't get an STI. Do that and you really get lambasted. It's kind of fun, actually. Which is why our social media accounts are in danger. We got another super chow. Let's see if I can get my stupid, there we go, Discord window to open. Dark Kikimura says, if feminists believe society runs on misogyny, why don't they ever make misogynistic arguments for women's rights? On purpose, I mean. So I saw the other day somebody was mocking the "Boys are stupid, throw rocks at them" t-shirt with a slogan, "Feminists are stupid, throw facts at them." It's about right. If they really believed that society ran on misogyny, yeah, they would. They would make misogynistic arguments. They would do whatever it took because they make a lot of money on feminism. And so they would want law and policy to be exactly the way they want it. And they would be willing to betray their whole belief system, basically, as a means of getting it. So that means personal accountability is a type of personal risk. Aha! See, there's the aha. Another bit of information long discussed in the men's rights movement is the fact, often noted in the writings of evolutionary psychology researchers, that likely because of the biological characteristics that make human females smaller on average, less physically strong, and more vulnerable to physical threats, especially while pregnant, women are more risk-averse than men. A characteristic that is likely exacerbated by cultural norms and traditions that are more restrictive and protective toward women than toward men. We talk about it quite a bit. I've even described a related phenomenon, safety net addiction among women, in which the addict is so caught up in her perceived need to avoid risk that if there is potential for a safety net, she won't even do normal things that don't require one unless one is put into place. Or she will give up protections for her civil rights and rightful freedoms in order to obtain safety nets, even if they're not really necessary, and she may demand you do as well. I'll say the worst part of this, right, that this behavior among women with the safety nets is that 9 times out of 10, the thing that they think is a safety net, that they are relying on, that they think they absolutely have to have, or they just can't handle life, right? They just can't do things without it, is detrimental. It actually holds them back. Safety nets are better, especially government-funded safety nets, but any type of legislative safety net, any type of charitable safety net where you're relying on handouts from somebody or you're relying on protections from somebody else, what you're basically doing is reducing your own capabilities.
That's what they got wrong about the civil rights and the gender stuff. They legislate everything.
Yeah. And what you end up with then is you have one portion of the population that produces wealth, and they get robbed, essentially. Like there's a very solid point to saying taxation is theft, because you're not allowed to say no. The money's taken without your consent. Just because you're cooperating at gunpoint, you know.
Didn't you guys go to war over taxes? Didn't you guys go? Hello.
My mic went out, didn't it?
Yeah.
Shit. That's my computer microphone. That's not good. I didn't even move. Why is it doing this? Hear me.
I can hear you now.
But I had to move everything around a little bit to sort of make it more secure. But essentially, yeah, the producing half of the population, or less than half really, is getting robbed at gunpoint under threat of state violence, right, to provide these safety nets to the portion of the population that does not produce wealth and is a net drain. And in a lot of cases, an example I'm just going to give an example. Right, I worked at a gas station for about 6 years, and in a convenience store. I worked with a lot of gals that, different employees came and went when I was there, and different management and everything. Most people that work in a place like that worked there for about 6 to maybe 24 months, right? 6 months to 2 years. And so I was a long timer. There was only one other person when I quit. There was only one other person there that had been there for a longer time than me. And like, he was there. He was a lifer in there. In fact, he only survived about 6 months after he retired. But in any case, these women, that they would go to work there, and they'd work there for those short amounts of time.
Hello.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Hello. Good, Mike's here. But they would be on some degree of welfare, usually food stamps, usually Medicaid, something called CHIP, which is Medicaid for your child. And so they would want to keep their hours low enough that they would continue to qualify for their safety nets. Because if you work a few hours of overtime here and there, and you make a couple $100 too much once, or you make $1 too much too frequently, they cut off everything. They don't step you down. You get too high up in income, and your gross becomes disqualifying. So you can increase your income by like 10 to 20 bucks and lose hundreds to thousands of dollars in benefits. So these safety nets are kind of designed to keep people dependent. There's that gap you have to jump if you want to get off of benefits and become an independent, self-providing individual. And you can't do that at a gas station, right? You're not going to, by going from part-time to full-time, suddenly make enough money to get those benefits. And Richard Bier says it's called the benefits cliff. That's one name I've heard from it, about it, or heard it called by, basically. But I've also heard it called the benefits canyon, because it's like you're trying to jump across the Grand Canyon. And it's pretty much the same principle, because you would be on a cliff. You can't get across unless you significantly increase your situation. Now, a lot of these gals, like if they get married and the person that they marry is, not divorced, not paying child support, not in a situation where his money is all being taken, then their income doubles and suddenly everything's okay. They don't need it anymore, right? But the other thing that happens is, if you go on temporarily, like, we were talked to that once, because I lost a job unexpectedly. They replaced me at the university where I was teaching photography with one of my students, and didn't tell me. Like, she had graduated, and now she has a degree. Well, I only have 30 years of experience in the field, which isn't the same as having a degree in something other than photography in the university system. And so the day that I was supposed to start the next quarter of classes, I found out that actually I wasn't teaching that class anymore. So we went on food stamps, right? Because I talked to my parents. I'm like, what am I going to do? This is a really serious situation. We don't have an extra penny, and now I just lost the equivalent of a part-time job. And that was the suggestion. Talk to your manager about getting on full time, If you can't get it right away, go on food stamps and keep pressing, or find another job and then just go in and tell them you don't need them anymore when you get that income replaced. So that's what I did. And I guess we were on about 4 months. It took about 4 months, and then they gave me full-time and started training me for lower management. And so I went into the office with my new paperwork that, here's my new income. I'm off. I know this is going to disqualify me. Thanks for the help. And the lady that was my caseworker says to me, if you divorce your husband, you could keep these benefits. That was her solution. Like, this wasn't a problem, but she had a solution for it anyway. Like, I was happy. I had replaced the income. We were back in the situation we were in before I lost the job. Didn't need food stamps. We're all good. Oh, well, you can still get them if you divorce your husband. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you, lady? A lot of women would take her up on that. They would totally take her up on that because it's a safety net, right? Oh, well, if we have these, maybe I can put some money away. Maybe I can pay ahead on the electric bill. Maybe I can. So what if we get divorced on paper? And I've known people that have done that. They have gotten divorced on paper. They continue to live together and they collect those benefits. Very crazy. But
sounds like it's a hammer trying to sell you a used nail.
Yep. It's very upsetting, though, to have somebody do that. And you're sitting there thinking, are you kidding me? This is what you think is a good idea. But yeah, safety nets, very dangerous. As soon as you get addicted to something like that, the whole idea of losing it becomes terrifying. Right? I wanted nothing more than to never have to go into that building again, never have to think about relying on money that I didn't earn, right? Or that my family didn't earn, and that I wasn't part of making possible to earn. Like, that just would be absolutely horrible. But most people, most women, you give them an opportunity to have somebody else covering their bases for them, they take it. And it never occurs to them that if it becomes unreliable, they're screwed. We got Roboto 1234567 gave us $1 and said, only 30 years, Hannah. If only you had 40 years. As a photographer is such things as just 3 days away from retirement. I don't actually plan on retiring. That's just not. It's some bad things are going to have to happen in order for me to decide to retire. I like doing stuff too much. That's just not going to work. Mr. Noob said, it gave us $5 and said, God, college admin people are such drama queens. I've had friends that they've done similar nonsense to. Yeah. And this was, I guess this was political against the person that hired me. And the person that ran the department prior, actually, not the person that hired me. The person that hired me is the person that fired all of the people that were working under the department head she was mad at. She hired me and she just forgot. So, but that's women for you, right? So there you go. But yeah, women and their safety net addiction, because women fear risk. And that doesn't mean all risk, right? Women will risk their entire future for an orgasm. But they won't try to jump the benefits cliff. They won't try to get to the other side of that canyon because they're scared. They're afraid what happens what if I lose? What if I lose? It's not like you can't apply again. In 1999, J.P. Barnes and Group published a meta-analysis of 150 studies in which the risk-taking tendencies of male and female participants were compared. Their report was titled Gender Differences in Risk-Taking, a Meta-Analysis. In it, the researchers stated their conclusion that gender differences in risk-taking exist and are proven beyond the conventional cutoff for small effects, but do vary according to context and age level. They noted that in one of their analyses they showed that males took more risks even when it was clear that it was a bad idea to take the risk, while the same... So I couldn't find a better picture for that, just wanted to say that. That was a bad idea right there. Same analysis revealed that women and girls seem to be disinclined to take risks, even in fairly innocuous situations, or when it was a good idea to take the risk. They followed it up by noting that this indicates that males tend to encounter negative consequences more often than they should, and it also means that females tend to encounter rewards less often than they should. And that, I think, is the gist of why women aren't CEOs and stuff like that as often as men. They don't take the risks it takes to get up each step of that ladder. I suspect that we have just made note of an underlying factor in gender disparities that feminists have spent the last 100 years calling discrimination against women. In 2023, another meta-analysis done by R.B. Vela titled Gender Differences in Risk-Taking Behaviors, a systematic review and meta-analysis of the domain-specific risk-taking scale, evaluated 24 studies and found that among the 5 distinct domains used in a domain-specific risk-taking scale, used to measure willingness to take risks, men displayed higher willingness than women on 4 of the 5 domains: financial, health and safety, recreational, and ethical. While in the domain of social risk, there was mostly no significant difference, though in some individual studies, women scored higher in that domain. So what that kind of means is when you look at risks that are involved in, say, switching jobs, when you're in a situation where you're spinning your wheels, your circumstances are stagnating, you're not getting promoted and you want to get promoted, you're not learning anything new and you want to learn something new. Men will remember, I was looking for a job when I found this one. Women will fight the system. They will fight to stay there. They will fight with people about being promoted. They won't leave. And they'll complain instead. Right? A lot of complaining, but no leaving. Just fighting. And so you end up in a situation where if a man cannot get where he wants to go, where he is, he finds a place where he can. And if a woman cannot get where she wants to go, where she is, she gets frustrated and angry and starts complaining, right? Threatening, lawsuits, going to human resources, making allegations against the men she works with, stuff like that. Whereas, if a woman thinks she has a guarantee, something to gain, she'll estimate wrong, right? Well, I don't have to work if I'm going to be with this guy. I don't have to work if I get this or that. Same thing with gambling. You find that there's very different habits, and the next bit of research coming up will sort of explain that. Meta-regression showed these patterns held regardless of publication year or average participant age. The phenomenon is so widely accepted as fact that there are also studies on why it occurs rather than whether it occurs. In 2006, C.R. Harrison Group published Gender Differences in Risk Assessment: Why Do Women Take Fewer Risks Than Men? In this study, 657 participants assessed their likelihood of engaging in various risky activities relating to 4 different domains and reported their perceptions of probability of negative outcomes, severity of potential negative outcomes, and enjoyment expected from the risky activities. The researchers reported that men reported higher likelihood in gambling, health, and recreational domains, while women stated that they perceived higher probability and severity of negatives and lower enjoyment. In other words, women feared risk-taking more, and that fear made them like it less. Critiques of... So that's another aspect of it. right? If you anticipate that it's going to be fun for you to take the risk, or that you're going to get some enjoyment out of it, say with gambling, and you can do that with other things. For instance, extreme sports. Obviously, this looks more like an AI image, but it could be a staged image. I don't know that a person would actually climb all the way out onto a small rock like that. But if somebody did do it, it wouldn't be a woman. Not very often, because it's too scary. What if you fall?
I can think of one risk that modern women especially take rather a lot, and it's their choice of sexual partner.
Yeah.
Although I have to wonder what the rewards are from always wanting a chiseled convict with 7 children from 7 different women.
The challenge of getting him to commit.
Possibly, but they must know that's a fool's folly. But I guess that's the
they know. They
might be fools.
And maybe it's sort of bragging rights to their fellow modern women. Look how dangerous my husband is, but he loves me. He's never done anything to me. What's that shiny you got there? That's I walked into a door, and so on and so forth.
It's the Beauty and the Beast thing all over again.
Yeah.
It's just it's which goes to show you women do have the capacity for risk taking, but it's sort of narrowed to this one category that doesn't even make sense. And it's probably nothing to do with testosterone either. Or it might be, because women do have testosterone to a degree, and maybe that's the only sort of way it affects them. Or maybe this is a risk that they take because of estrogen.
Yeah, I was going to say estrogen as well.
I'm not a real doctor, blah, blah.
Yeah,
So I don't know.
I don't know if it's hormonal or not. The thing that I would look at is it's not that women are 100% risk averse and men are 0% risk averse. And it's not that if you look at a group of men and a group of women, that their risk aversion will all be identical to other people in their gender group. It's that if you drew 2 lines representing the spectrum of risk aversion that women fall along, and the spectrum of risk aversion that men fall along, you would find that the men's line starts and ends at higher points than the women's line. They are less risk averse overall, and as a group, there will be some women who are, I'm sorry, they're more risk averse overall, and as a group, men's risk taking will be higher, women's risk aversion will be higher. And men are more likely to have successes because of that, but they're also more likely to have failures. It's a lot like if you look at the spectrum of intelligence, you'll see that geniuses are more likely to be men, and people with severe intellectual disabilities are more likely to be men, whereas people in the middle are more likely to be female. Just a little bit.
We have more men than we do women in my day center. So.
Yep, that's everywhere. I work with people with disabilities, people with intellectual disabilities who are adults, and men do outnumber the women. Although it's not extreme, but it is noticeable.
And the women that we do get, they tend to have boyfriends already as well. So.
Yep. And by the way, with the risk taking, it's also different, right? Women will take those social risks, right? They'll do socially daring things like wearing an outfit that is maybe not the latest fashion to a party, but is a daring outfit to get people's attention.
Wearing white after Labor Day.
Yeah. Well, or say being the first person to bring back bell bottoms. Or God forbid the bubble skirt. I hope those things never come back. They were so uncomfortable.
Or being the first girl to read the Twilight books before they became popular.
Yep.
See, when you talked about fashion, I thought you were going to talk about how a lot of women walk the streets of very dangerous urban areas
yeah.
at night, dressed like prostitutes, and they don't see the risk because well, men should just control themselves.
Yeah, there's that too.
Including all the men that they've brought over from distant planetary biomes where they have very different customs and so
You could
on.
say,
And
you
women
could say
will
men.
take that risk, but they're only 30 to 35% of extreme sports participation. Go ahead, Richard.
I was going to say, you could say men bought over from Pandora.
Yeah. But yeah. So women they'll take risks that don't necessarily have a good payoff, right? You don't really gain anything from risking getting mugged.
Or worse.
And or worse. And I suppose there's social gain for being the daring person that brings back the hymnline of 20 years ago that people haven't worn in 20 years or whatever. But
I imagine it's because when people tell them they're being risky, they, like I said, that no, I'm not.
yeah,
it's men's fault. All of this risk you speak of should be placed at the foot of men, and how they should just be taught not to rape. And then we say, yes, we already teach them not to rape, but sub 1% of them, which is a lot of people when you're talking busy like city centres at night. Because you see 100 people on the street, one of them, actually more since we're part of the third world, is going to be that risk factor. But then they're like, well, why aren't the decent men of our own culture protecting us from those men and expecting no reward from doing so?
Yep.
And we keep saying, well, if you can dress less provocatively, no, how dare you? This is misogyny. They're being incredibly risky when they do this, but they don't see it as risky because they have no sense of agency or accountability or responsibility or all those buzzwords that we like over here.
I think also a lot of women don't think ahead about stuff like that. Like they see it as a daring social risk. They don't see it as a physical risk. And the minute that it becomes a physical risk, then they start throwing blame. They start lamenting what happened to them. They're upset and scared and everything. But it's too late, right? But it starts even in childhood. It's so ingrained that like I was the only girl I knew growing up. Even at school where there were lots of other girls, not just in my neighborhood where they're the only girls my age, there were only like 2 or 3 other girls my age. But it was the only girl I knew that would pick up bugs. The other girls they would reach for the bug, right? And if it moved.
You're talking about insects, right?
Yeah, bugs. Yes. Insects. Like I used to like to go fishing, and crickets make good bait because they swim and it attracts the fish's attention. And of course, earthworms are good too. I'm also the only person I know that ate an earthworm to prove an argument. So I'm a little bit different. I'm not just different from the girls. I'm not like the boys either, right? To prove an argument anyway. But not the only person, no. Lots of people have survived on those. And I knew that. But I had a friend try to help me catch crickets one time, and she couldn't because she couldn't touch them without killing them. She was too jerky about it. Like, I'm clumsy now. I won't handle bugs now because I'm afraid I'll hurt them. But I used to be able to just pick them up and examine them and stuff. If they bite you, most bugs don't do any harm. It might hurt or it might itch, but it's not that big of a deal. Only mosquitoes and 2 breeds of spiders should be left really, really left alone in my area, where, I'm not going to run across a bunch of other things that are going to cause severe reactions. It just might suck a little bit for a while, right? But you got to learn something. And boys will do that. Boys will play with ants. Boys will play with grasshoppers and crickets. They'll play with pill bugs. Pill bugs are fun because you flick them with your finger and they go rolling. Those little roly-polies, right? They'll play with all that stuff. And worms and dirt and everything. And boys don't have problems putting the worm on the fish hook when you're fishing, or the cricket. They don't get upset that the cricket's going to die and might be in pain and stuff. But I discovered that I couldn't go fishing with other little girls. We just could not do that together because they couldn't catch bait. And if they did catch the bait, they couldn't put it on the hook. Right? So it's even in elementary school, you just can't. The other girls wouldn't catch crawdaddies by sticking their finger down and letting it get a hold of it either. Like, that's the easiest way. All you have to do is bait them with your finger, and they will pinch it, and then you can pick it up. And the hard part's getting it to let go. But they're like little mini lobsters. They're fascinating to look at. And so we ran around the canal and played with crawdads. But the girls that I was friends with would not do that. So little girls even, they aren't risk takers the way that little boys are. And little girls that do act like that are more likely to be unusual, gender atypical, autistic, something like that. Not your average little girl. And then when we grow up, girls have a totally different attitude toward giving up their safety nets. Whereas boys, they want to explore everything. Studies showing more risk willingness among men and more risk aversion among women note that while the differences can't be ignored, they're not dramatic. Evidence of differences regarding specific risks backs that up. Both sexes do take risks. The gap is more of an average among a spectrum. Gambling demonstrates this, for example. The practice attracts both sexes, and despite the fact that it involves risk of loss, it is considered a fun recreational activity among both sexes. However, Lucy T. Tran MSc and group screened 3,692 reports, with 380 representative unique samples in 68 countries and territories, and stated in their I just have to say that's a lot of reading. That had to take them a long time, or they had to have a computer program helping them with keywords. Just pointing that out, because that's a shit ton of research. Report titled "The Prevalence of Gambling and Problematic Gambling: A Systemic Review and Meta-Analysis," that while nearly half of adults globally have gambled, about 46.2%, rates of gambling were higher in men, about 49.1%, than in women, about 37.4%. The lower prevalence among females than males was not just in overall gambling, but showed as a pattern, whether among adults or adolescents, and whether examining any risk gambling or problematic gambling. So you get that. What that research showed was that there was no level of risk in gambling where women were as high as or higher than male gamblers. But women do engage in every type of gambling. They just, some levels, there may be a bigger gap, but there's no level that eliminates the gap. But there was no area of gambling that the study found to be exclusively male. Women are more risk averse, but not so risk averse that none of them will take that risk, and many will do it for fun. We know that personal accountability is a risk. It's a labor risk. It's a self-image risk. It's a social risk. It can even be a serious economic risk, especially if one is taking accountability for one's work-life balance, or one's sexual choices. And of course, that happens to men, not necessarily so much to women, because women don't have to take accountability. Men don't get a choice. If a woman says she's going to raise the child, a man gets stuck with the child support bill. So women say sex is a bigger risk for women than for men because women have to go through childbirth. But the truth is that women don't. They can abort. And even if they go through childbirth, the risk of death in childbirth is incredibly low. It's lower than the risk of death in the workplace. And men have to work for decades, at least 2, to get out from under a child support debt. Sometimes, if the system is particularly harsh toward a man, he might have to work longer. For instance, in Canada, and I know in some parts of the United States, you can have a debt obligation imposed based on what you're making at a particular time. And if that income dries up, it doesn't matter whether the conditions were under your control or not. Your employer could go out of business, and the judge would say, well, you better replace that income because it's that past income shows that you can make that much money. Your industry could dry up, which can happen to things like photography, for instance, is not as lucrative as it was 30 years ago. It's a lot more accessible to the public. A lot more people have fail-safes that make it harder for them to not get the pictures they want, to fail at photography. And so if somebody was a photographer, their income could dry up really fast, and there's no control.
That's how they got Dave Foley and Tyrese.
Mm-hmm.
Because Dave Foley was on a sitcom in the US, and the judge said he's got to give most of his wages while he was on that sitcom, and the sitcom got cancelled. And Dave can't go back to Canada.
Yep. And
same thing with Tyrese as well. He was in movies and stuff, and those movies dried up, and he still got a. Well, he doesn't have to pay it now because his kids turned 18, but at the time he still had to pay the amount of child support.
Well, this is the other part of that, right? So you're on child support obligation, and let's say the judge decided that you owe X amount per month, every month, until the child is 18, and you're paying less than that, right? It doesn't go away. It's in arrears. So if you don't pay off that total by the time the child is 18, you still have to continue paying on it. The state keeps track of that debt, and they will continue to take your money until that is down to a 0. And they can incarcerate you and make it impossible for you to earn that money and still take that. Let's see. We have Roboto 1234567 gave us $1 and said, were you aware that child marriage is legal in Ohio, as well as the fact that there was a bill to outlaw it and said politicians said no to doing so? Thought opinions. So no, child marriage is not legal in Ohio. The age of consent in Ohio is 16. And there's not a law that permits marriage to occur between people who are not old enough to sign a contract. You actually have to get parental permission to get married if you are under the age of 18. And there has to be a really good reason for it. And if anybody has an objection, the court system will get involved. So I don't know who told you that child marriage is just flat out legal in Ohio. I'm in Ohio. I live in Ohio. And I've had friends experience this particular issue. They did not get married, but They wanted to, and they couldn't because they were underage. So this is not true. That's if it's not opinion, it's fact. It is not true. What you're promoting with that super chow is not correct. So, and yeah, I hear stuff like that about Ohio all the time. This is a recent news story. That's probably like the recent news story of the 10-year-old that needed an abortion. That disappeared, and it turns out that the reason that the 10-year-old needed an abortion was because she was taken from her country, brought to the United States by a coyote, and then the Biden administration deposited her with another illegal immigrant, and then that illegal immigrant allowed another illegal immigrant to rape her, probably for money. So when you say this is a recent story in the news, you have to watch out for what the news media is telling you, because they're probably covering some things up that, if you know those important details, you find out that what they're telling you is true about the state isn't. It's false framing. It's like they used to say it was legal until 1993 in Michigan to rape your wife. Well, it wasn't, actually. Because during that time period, the crime of rape did require that you had to be overcome. It had to be against your will. It couldn't just be without your verbal consent. And in order for that to happen, somebody would have to engage in battery. Battery was illegal. So to get to the point of raping your wife, you would have to violate the laws against beating your wife. And therefore, it was not legal to rape your wife in Michigan. But feminists will still tell you it was, because there wasn't a law that specified, that rape was rape in a marital situation.
From the stereotypes you hear, you would think Ohio is the South of the North. By that I mean like the hillbilly state of the North.
Depends on what part of Ohio you're in.
Or that Michigan is the South of the North, or that Wisconsin is the South. All the Yankee states are kind of vying to not be the South of the North, because the North still has this stereotype that everyone in the South is a hillbilly, and that's not quite the case. You'll just have different kinds of degenerates, shall we say?
Yeah.
Well, just different accents of degenerates, to be honest.
Yeah. The thing is, feminist sources will say stuff like that about every state that doesn't have specificity in the law, right? But it doesn't have to have specificity in the law. It's very much like saying there's no law against a 7-year-old driving a car. Okay? There is no specificity in the law that says 7-year-olds in particular may not drive cars. It doesn't say that anywhere in any law in the entire United States. But that doesn't make it legal for a 7-year-old to get behind the wheel of a car and start driving if they can reach the pedals. You have to have a license to drive a car. So feminists will frame stuff like that. Oh, it's totally legal for a 7-year-old to drive a car. No, it's not. Well, there's no law that says a 7-year-old can't drive a car. Yes, there is. It's the law that says you have to have a license, and you can't get a license until you're 16. In some states now, you can't get a license until you're 18. 7 is younger than that. Therefore, if you get caught driving a car as a 7-year-old, you're caught driving without a license. That's illegal.
And there's all manner of obsolete laws that are still technically on the books. A lot of people do this when they play games of truth and lies. They say, in such and such American state, it's illegal to carry a salmon on your left shoulder after dark unless you're a sheriff or some shit. And then you look into it, and yes, it is on the books. because it's a law, it's some obscure law from the fucking 1800s or something, and it's never ever enforced. Much like jaywalking is officially a law, but no one ever gets done for it. I mean, we have similar laws all over Europe as well. There's this famous one that you're allowed to shoot a Welshman with a crossbow if you're within the walls of Yorkshire Cathedral or some shit. Yeah, there's just a lot of laws that have never been officially repealed because they're just so damn silly.
Yeah. But point being, when you read an article like that, always be skeptical, especially if they're trying to raise outrage. How many 8-year-olds do you think get married every year in Ohio? Because I can tell you the answer. I can tell you the exact number of 8-year-olds that get married in Ohio annually. 0. 0 is the number. It does not happen. They might play wedding, but they don't have weddings. So it's a situation where other things prohibit it from happening. There doesn't have to be a stipulation specifically that you cannot marry an 8-year-old, because other things prohibit an 8-year-old from being married. Throughout history, women's accountability for their work, lifestyle, and sexual choices, even when has been higher than it is now, has always been different from that of men by necessity, because women bear children, then have to be there to nurse and nurture them, even when somebody has to go out and hunt the mammoth. Historically, that somebody has been the child's father, and historically, it has been the mother's primary job to make sure that his children are fed, protected, and cared for while he is gone, and that his home environment is a haven of comfort and security for him to return to after the hunt. There are probably feminists somewhere off in the distance screaming their eyeballs out because I said that. This is what women evolved for. We evolved to oversee the family, not over and above the father, right? Not over and above the husband, but to ensure that while he's thinking about things that we didn't evolve to deal with, we're making sure he doesn't have to think about the things we did evolve to deal with. Regardless of whether the mammoth is an actual animal or a paycheck a man brings home from his job. In a discussion on X.com this week, the final key on the real keyring dropped into place. Commenter Dre McFluve posted an image of a translation from the Book of Changes, or I Ching, an ancient Chinese text used for guidance, decision-making, and understanding of the natural cycles of life. I debated explaining that, and then I thought, you know what? There might be some Zoomers who don't know. This text operates on the philosophy that the universe is constantly changing and everything is connected. It said, 6 in the second place means contemplation through the crack of the door, furthering for the perseverance of a woman. Through the crack of the door, one has a limited outlook. One looks outward from within. Contemplation is subjectively limited. One tends to relate everything to oneself and cannot put oneself in another's place and understand his motives. This is appropriate for a good housewife. It is not necessary for her to be conversant with the affairs of the world. But for a man who must take active part in public life, such a narrow, egotistical way of contemplating things is, of course, harmful. So 1,000 years ago, they knew women were narcissistic. That's what that tells you, because that's 1,000 years old.
Whoever came up with Adam and Eve kind of figured it out, didn't they?
Yep, they knew that women.
Not enough.
They knew women were solipsistic, and they knew women were narcissistic, and they said, this is, if all you're focused on, if all you're responsible for is what takes place within the walls of your home and on your land that you're husband in your family is fed, that your home is a safe haven and a haven of comfort and restoration of the spirit. If that's all you have to do, then you don't have to be all-knowing. You don't have to be involved in every little thing. You don't have to spy on the neighbors. You don't have to keep up with the news. Right? You don't need any of that, because what you're dealing with is in that small setting. You can get away with not caring about the rest of the world, because the rest of the world doesn't come into contact with you. But it's different if you're going out and working, if you're in the military, if you're doing business across the world, things like that. Suddenly you have to not be solipsistic. So for thousands of years of human evolution, women didn't have to not be solipsistic. Women didn't have to not be narcissistic. And now all of a sudden, women are in men's sphere of everything, right? I am right now, based on what our listening metrics have said in the past, talking to people in every country on this side of the Atlantic Ocean, in several countries in Europe, in some countries in Africa, in a few. I'm also talking to a few people who are in Japan and some people who are in Korea. Right? I don't know if I'm reaching anybody in China anymore, but historically, I have looked into where we reach, and so I know that things that I have said have reached the ears of individuals in Zimbabwe and Brazil and Iceland. It's very strange to know that, right? Especially as a woman, especially as a non anchor, news anchor. Right? I'm not on any big television, anything. So we're in the same spheres as men now. Women can't afford to be solipsistic anymore, and men cannot afford for women to be solipsistic anymore. But that is how we evolved. And that is how women became risk averse. It's in a woman's nature to not want to expand too far. And we won't make any fat jokes about that. I have expanded more than my fair share anyway.
You just did another one.
Yeah, I know. Oh, it's an impulse control issue. And yes, that was another one. We'll just move on. It struck me how this points out that one's most effective and efficient contemplative perspective is determined in large part by one's spectrum and scope of responsibilities. One's ability to take risks is also determined in large part by one's spectrum and scope of responsibilities. So I'm going to repeat that. Yeah, not quite that far back. That. There it is. Hopefully that's too far. All right. Plating things is, of course, harmful. It struck me how this points out that one's most effective and efficient contemplative perspective is determined in large part by one's spectrum and scope of responsibilities. This is a big deal to realize, not because it wasn't already floating around in my head. It was, and it just sort of crystallized in words there. But the things that you're going to understand best are the things that you've taken responsibility for, because you do the work to understand them. If you haven't taken responsibility for something, you don't really have to spend a lot of time examining it. You can, people do that with hobbies as well. Yep. Sorry, I forgot Australia. That is Acraphus. and we do have a lot of people that listen to us in Australia. But the thing is, you know how people will tell you what their profession is like, what their job is like, and there will be people that'll argue. No, 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 it's like this. They don't do that job. The people that you got to listen to are the ones that actually do that job most of the time. And the reason is because since they're taking responsibility in that area, since they have responsibility in that area, they don't get a choice to not know things. And they can't just talk shit. If they do, they end up creating problems for themselves and for their job. So this is pretty much the basis of expertise, right? Somebody
It's
that's more trusted to discuss something because that's an area of responsibility for them, that they have spent a great deal of time responsible for that area. I would rather be told how to fly a plane by a pilot than, say, by somebody who did some of the programming on a flight simulator.
and it's also why parents, when they become parents, usually, not always, but very often, move sort of rightward along the spectrum. And not that I want to bring everything down to that spectrum, but when you discover what it's like to become responsible for other lives, that's when people uh, grow this whole other lobe in their conscience, if you will. It sort of relates to that quote that's often apocryphally attributed to Winston Churchill. A man who is not a liberal when he is young has no heart, and is not a conservative when he's older has no brain. But it sort of goes deeper than that, and it can be made more concise than that. We are born into the extreme left, and if we are lucky, or well, rather, if we are responsible, we drift rightwards as we learn more about the world. And again, this comes down to the left right spectrum, which I generally find reductive and unhelpful. But it does say a lot. When people are born, they have nothing but their own needs in mind, and as they grow up and not just become parents, when they develop the various loads on their back that life comes with, they sort of they grow out of this childish. I don't even want to call it idealism. It's just, it seems to be the natural state of children to just go, wah, I want, I need. By the way, everyone should share unless I want something, and then wah, I want, I need. And so nature has always made it necessary for people to grow out of that shit, and people did grow out of that shit because they had to. But as we became so much more decadent, largely because of the labor saving devices we've sort of come across that have replaced various of these responsibilities, we've found ourselves surrounded by more and more people who stay in that embryonic larva stage, the fucking caterpillars. And more and more of those caterpillars were put in charge of things, despite having never grown out of that childlike state. They're adults, they can use adult words, these fancy series of syllables that they learn in university, but they're still just toddlers at heart. And that faction of society has grown with every new revolution, to be honest, not just the industrial one, but the agricultural one before it and the technological one after it. And I mean, we do have mechanisms in place to stop these child adults, for want of a better phrase, what we call man babies when men do it, and what I suppose we would call woman babies when women do it, and it is women who do it mostly. Yeah, we've just been sleepwalked into this society where we're being led by people with the moral mental network of a child, because they've never had to grow out of it, because they've never really had responsibilities, but they've been given power by their predecessors. And this is why I keep saying peak woke was not 4 years ago or 8 years ago. It wasn't even yesterday. Peak woke is always today and tomorrow, because it keeps getting worse. Because there's no mechanism in place to stop childish people from replacing adult morality, adult responsibility with gimmies, with I didn't do nothing and gimme. And yeah, the Overton window has been pushed to such an absurd place that anyone who isn't a walking toddler is a bigot and a racist and a misogynist and all this. And yeah, I think that explains more than I'm capable of explaining right now.
Yeah. People get to the point where their emotional self is so much bigger than their rational self that they can't even begin to conceive of adulthood, and one of the things that, I kind of identified growing up, difference between an adult and a child, is deliberateness. Something I mentioned when I was talking to Paul last night, although I don't think I related it specifically to adulthood. But my dad used to talk about signs of strength, and people are always real men this and real men that, real men blah blah blah, and most of the time it's real men are self-sacrificing in this way or that way. Real men have more self-control than everybody else in this way or that way, and so on. Dad didn't use the phrase real men, because all adult males who are not imaginary are real men, right? Even if they go by a character name. Hulk Hogan was a real man. You could meet him. You could go places and see him and he was there, right? Even if he had a different real name, he was an actual real human being, right? Superman is not a real man, because he's a character. There are people who play Superman, but
even He-Man is not a real man.
Even He-Man is not a real man,
despite the pronouns,
right? But yeah, Superman is just in comics and movies and stuff. So you can't go find Superman right now. Well, you can't go find Hulk Hogan right now, but you can probably find his grave. But in any case, the point was he didn't like that term. So he talked about signs of strength. And signs of strength were not about stereotypical masculinity. They were about deliberateness and knowing what you have control over in your environment and using that control to the benefit of yourself and the people around you and not to their detriment. So he would say things like, strong men do not slam doors. They shut them. Shutting the door is a deliberate act. It is deliberately done in that manner to avoid damaging the door and disturbing the people around you. You're not throwing yourself around. You're not showing temper and so on. And it was that way, that discussion was that way with everything. And it was something to teach us growing up. He would not pull any punches on that with me. He kept reminding me that girls can be strong. And it's weak to throw yourself around. It's strong to deliberately control your own actions. And that was the thing that I had a hard time with growing up. So he focused on that a lot with me. A lot of people maybe don't sit around and think of what it is that makes you an adult. But I did. And I think that's probably the biggest identifying factor. Women have a tendency to just flit through life like butterflies. Oh, I think I'll flap away over here a little bit, and I'll flap away over there a little bit. Oh no, I'm caught in a spider web. Somebody help me. But they don't consider their actions. They just go the way the wind blows them. They're not trying deliberately to go from point A to point B, where in a way that they consider the factors that might affect their trip and try to mitigate danger and try to maximize their potential for success. It's just like, oh, I think I'll go from point A to point B, jump. Oh no, I fell off a cliff. Right? And I say this as somebody who nearly fell off an 80-foot cliff trying to take a picture of the side of the mountain when I was a kid. My dad was there, so I'm here. My foot was all the way off when I felt Dad's arm go around my waist. I got the lecture of a lifetime, which was fair because I almost killed myself. But I did stupid stuff like that all the time when I was a kid.
Hannah, everything in the world is trying to kill you. You don't have to do the job for them. Okay?
Yeah. That was in Ohio, too. That was at Hocking Hill State Park. But I don't feel too bad. Okay. You guys know the 7 Years in Hell story, right? Yes. You know Bridget from the 7 Years in Hell story, the good wife. She did that, too. So it's a photographer thing. But it's a girl thing. And I'm laughing about it, but the truth is, if I had started to fall, my dad would have reached out to catch me, even if it meant he might fall.
Yeah.
Right. Women don't think about stuff like that. Women don't think about, if I fuck up, somebody else might get hurt. If I fall off of this goddamn pedestal, I'm going to land on the men around me and crash into them. Maybe smash them, maybe break them in some way. Women don't think about that. Or if they do, they get off on it instead of being careful and deliberate because they're not grown up. A few women are. A few women consider that, and they do try to climb down carefully and have both feet on the ground instead. But not enough. Not anywhere near enough. We got Roboto, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 gave us $1 and said, fortunately, one can buy non-woke products for a hefty price, at least in the USA. Yeah. Oh gosh, Richard Beer brought up the two girls standing at the edge of a cliff, marveling at how their hair starts standing up and sticking out in all directions. There's a few videos like this. The one that really gets me is the one where the chick sticks her hand out into the staticky feeling, and they hear it. They hear the sound. And as a person who has been shocked, I reached for what I thought was a phone line when I was a kid, and it arced and zapped me and knocked me out of a tree. The idea of being struck by lightning is absolutely horrifying. And just watching that, like my hair, just thinking about watching that, my hair is standing up all over my body now. I'm not going to get electrocuted. It's just, that's such a goose walked over your grave moment to even think about. And those women are so stupid, and so many people get killed when that happens to them. Like, survival is you're I don't know if you're even lucky if you survive when you get struck by lightning, because you usually have pretty bad burns. It's rare when you get a person that has. There's been a few that gets struck by lightning. They don't have really bad burns and they don't have brain damage. But if that was happening, I would be getting the hell out of that space so fast. I would not want to be anywhere near that, because you know that a lightning bolt is going to strike there. It's going to discharge right there. It's fucked up. One's ability to take risks is also determined in large part by one's spectrum and scope of responsibilities. And think about why. Why is your ability to take risk determined by your spectrum and scope of responsibilities? I mean, it's because the things that you have to consider in regard to those responsibilities give you a greater ability to evaluate that risk. So a lot of times the reason that women are more risk averse is because when they look at a risk, they are looking into a room that has all the lights turned off. And somebody has said to you, somewhere in that room, there's a pit. And if you fall into it, you're going to fall onto spikes and die. Right? But you can't see where you're going. That's the risk that they're looking at. Not because they're denied anything, but because their scope of focus is narrower. They're looking out the window. They're not out into the world. Whereas a lot of times when men take those risks, besides their natural tendency to take more risks growing up, that have led to them developing more ability to evaluate and decide, is the potential reward worth the risk, and so on. They have more experiences that give them clues where that hole is. The lights might be on in their room. They can see. And so you have a lot of instances where just that scope of responsibility, that spectrum and scope of responsibility makes a huge difference in your ability to decide if the risk is worth the reward. And it also makes it less risky because you're able to determine the safer way to do it. Of course, those factors affect one's potential for personal accountability and also color its presentation. Traditionally, a woman's responsibilities have had a much narrower scope than those of men, and women's shade of personal accountability has reflected that. Women have been able to uphold cultural standards and take responsibility within that narrower scope by following the traditional cultural norms that feminists hate so much. Premarital abstinence rather than sexual promiscuity. Homemaking and stewardship of their household resources rather than heavy spending and building up debt. Loyalty to their husband and family. Diligent nurturing of their children. 2 + 2 + 2. The historical gap plus women's aversion. Plus the fact that having a narrower scope of responsibility means having a narrower scope of factors that are available to consider in order to exercise personal accountability. It leads to one more factor. Due to the historical role women filled, and what their limited outlook presented to them for contemplation and consideration, women have been culturally programmed, perhaps evolved over time, to be a little selfish. Combine this with humanity's, that is, mankind's, history of advancements in technology, security, safety, and comfort within civilizations, and that selfishness gets more and more indulged. Hardship inspires masculine ingenuity and resourcefulness. The resulting creative advancement leads to prosperity and convenience, which ultimately breeds complacency, leading women to become increasingly solipsistic and narcissistic, and increasingly, sometimes ridiculously, dependent on men and social safety nets to rescue them from the consequences of their own choices. So we have this history, right, of men supporting women. And it's not just if you have a baby, he has to support you, right? Historically, a woman was her father's responsibility until she was her husband's responsibility. And it was unusual for a woman to take responsibility for herself, to leave her father's home unmarried and live on her own, because women didn't have to do that. They do now, right? But once upon a time, you could just live with your parents until they passed away. You take care of them until they pass away, and you might be considered an old maid or a spinster, but you wouldn't be on your own until you outlived your parents, if you were female, if you never got married. And if you inherited a home because of that, you're probably going to get married shortly thereafter. So women had no reason, basically, in their scope of responsibilities, their scope of experiences, to develop a sense of fairness that didn't weigh themselves in higher than everybody else, right? They developed a sense of self-importance and a sense of selfishness. And on top of that, you had, because women were naturally somewhat afraid to take risks, you had this feedback loop where women couldn't step out of that. Right? You have all of your life somebody else is responsible for you, and all of your life that person is the person that's most likely to want to indulge you. You develop this sense of entitlement to be indulged. And it's probably where the aristocrats, the French aristocrats that invented gynocentrism, got that idea that they should always be indulged. That they're wealthy. They were the responsibility of their fathers until they were the responsibility of their husbands. And everybody treated them like they were special. Of course, they developed an entitlement to it. Let's see.
And, despite everything I said about the maybe the agricultural, industrial, and technological revolutions being such an important factor in infantilizing the human race, especially women, I think the most important factor is governments, including aristocracies, which were a sort of primordial version of government, of ruling classes, because ruling classes for a very long time have leaned into gynocentrism, because even if you have machines to do all of your jobs for you, like washing machines and dishwashers and whatever does the job of whatever farmers and indeed their wives used to do, you still have to be in charge of those machines. You have to figure out how to operate those machines and maintain those machines. And yes, it's men that generally do the maintenance of those machines.
Yep.
But that doesn't doesn't so much reduce women's accountability and responsibility. It merely funnels it into the use and upkeep of these machines. It just makes their jobs easier. Whereas what governments do, up to and including the toffs who were in charge of France before the revolution, and indeed down to and including the clowns we have in charge of our politics nowadays, it's always about it's not about enhancing women's abilities. It's about reducing their accountability and making men responsible for all the things they do, because government is not driven by technology. It's driven by rules that are pretty much arbitrarily decided, and those arbitrarily decided rules are always men should take responsibility for women, because they don't think these things through. They're thinking with their fucking lizard brain. Well, mammal brain, I suppose. Reptiles sort of aren't really into that. Well, it's complicated, but it seems to be mammalian species where men actually begin to take responsibility for everything up to and including children. And yes, there's a lot of theories about how some dinosaur species were a bit like seahorses, where the women laid the eggs and then the males raised them. But that's a great deal of speculation. It's largely humans, actually. There's a very few mammals that do what the human species is capable of doing, because it's only the human species with its big brains where men can actually realize that children are their children, and so they take responsibility for them. And that was a breakthrough, in my opinion, because when men know that the children are theirs and they have an incentive to take care of them, like, they do it at an autistic level that women could never. Like, they treat their children as this project. They love them as well on a sort of emotional level, but they sort of go, right, how do we hyper focus this task of making sure these children stay alive and they develop healthily, and so on. And that's, I think, why the human species did develop so quickly from the moment they developed whatever bit of the brain that is, until the present day. And that's why the various revolutions of technology have sped up so fast. Like, take the time between the agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution, and then take the distance between the industrial revolution and the technological revolution. The first distance is like 10,000 years or something, and the second distance is 100 years. And the next one, which I think is probably AI, which is still sort of technology, but it's this whole other level of technology, is it's again going to give people these tools that's going to help them advance everything about humanity. But it's going to keep being hampered by this ruling class that we've quite wrongly installed, that does nothing but revert us back to the worst parts of human nature, where it's all protect the women's, protect the women's and not the men. Like, every technology has made it more important that we in fact protect the men, because the men are the ones who invent these technologies and maintain these technologies, and yet we've always been pushed in the other direction by this fake royalty of humans who think they're doing the best, by just reverting to this primordial nature of women and children first. Well, children first makes sense, but to latch women first on top of that has never made any sense in the light of any revolutionary technology. It's just, it might have all come from romantic chivalry. It might all have been spawned by this one really fucking bad idea in the Dark Ages, where we just have to blame men for everything and continue to treat women like children. That's not a form of technology. This is not even remotely. You can't bend it any way to call that a form of technology. It's a form of governance. Gynocentrism is, it's practically the opposite of technology. It's the bane of technology. It's the opposite of technology.
It's it ruined the internet.
Yeah. And it'll ruin the next thing. It'll ruin AI.
It already has.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it all depends on a particular human trait. Men optimize everything, like they come into contact with. They conquer it, right, and then they figure out how to redesign it, or rearrange it, or otherwise redo it to make it the most benevolent and beneficial to people, and the least dangerous and the least of a detriment to people. They've even optimized garbage. Like, men have optimized garbage to make it the least bothersome to people. Right? They've optimized shit to make it the least dangerous and the least bothersome to people that it can be. And at the other end of it, they've optimized a data management, right? Data analysis, collection analysis, and usage to do everything from controlling machines and figuring out problems and doing what we're doing right now to artificial. Well, it's not really artificial intelligence yet. LLMs aren't really artificial intelligence yet, but we're getting there. And it's been mostly men the whole time. Women kind of steward, and they create systems of hospitality out of that, and sort it out and lay ground rules for, the social boundaries of how these things get used and such. Is not necessarily a bad balance, right? But as long as women are narcissistic, solipsistic, and entitled, and you have actually what Paul's live stream was about yesterday, romance in the works. Romance is a huge monkey wrench in the gears of human evolution. It takes what was once a natural human relationship, storge, the connection that you have with your family, where they are the most important people in your life, and you care very deeply about them. You're very invested in their welfare and their comfort and happiness, and they are in yours as well. Like, it takes that and it makes it one-sided, that the male is now obligated to have that toward the female, but she doesn't have to reciprocate. And it puts her up on that pedestal where she doesn't really belong. It makes her not understand anymore that to advance as an adult in your life, you have to be able to be self-critical. You can't improve if nothing is wrong, right? You can't improve if there's nowhere left to go but down. And if you don't care about the people around you as much as you care about yourself, especially your family, you don't care about your family as much as you care about yourself, you end up being a loser, even though that's not even what you're trying to do. If we don't fix that, then AI and other modern advancements will end up being a disaster for humanity, because they will get abused. Everything will be profit driven. Everything will be driven toward optimizing, not family safety and community safety and benefits to all people, but individuals, monopolizing the benefits of it so that they can get the attentions of women, various women. And that's the way it'll go. If women can shape up, which is a tall order, But if women can develop some adulthood, can become more accountable than they were, start being more deliberate in their actions, start considering the people around them, and remember how to love, because romance and love are not the same thing. In fact, I would actually call them polar opposites. You can't love somebody and enslave them at the same time. It doesn't work. That's not how it works. Right? That's not how any of this works.
Love's kind of meaningless. Love, the word love is like the word hello.
No, it's not.
It doesn't really mean anything. It's
Love has a
it's like the
set
word
of,
yes.
no.
It's just
It
a
has a
thing
set of
that
characteristics.
implies some things depending on what you're talking about.
Yeah, love has a set of characteristics, right? Love involves companionship when you're talking about people, but it involves dedication. And I would say that you can only love people. Everything else, it's a different concept. Like patriotism, people think of patriotism as a type of love for your country, right? But it's not the same. Even if you would die for your country, because you don't have companionship with your country, you don't have any kind of, you have intimacy with your family members. You only have sexual intimacy with your life partner or your sexual partner, but you have intimacy with all of your family members. And that desire for that intimacy is part of love. And that desire for that companionship is part of love. Like friendship is a type of love. And that investment in the other, where you care about the person that you love to the degree that you want that person to have success and contentment and to be comfortable and to want your companionship and so on. That's love. And you approach love with humility. You know, like you approach lust with narcissism, but you approach love with humility. And so it's separate from lust. You approach romance with narcissism, but you approach love with humility. So it's separate from romance.
But at the same time, you could say I love pizza, and that just means I like pizza a lot.
Yeah, people use the word incorrectly, but that doesn't mean that the concept
words are
doesn't
like
exist.
this. They're not prescriptive. They are descriptive, and it depends who's using it and in what context. And I know you
Right.
can say that about every word, so no word means anything, and so on and so forth.
But it doesn't mean love isn't real.
No, of course not. It just
Right.
depends on the context.
Right. So in any case, yeah. I would just point out that once again, it's going to rely on women growing up. Everything that could happen in the future that is good, humanity could be great if women grow up. I got a super chat from Speaking of Women Not Understanding Risk versus Reward. That's the name. That person gave us $5 and said, I remember a story from 1 to 2 years ago where a couple of European women drove past a bear and her cubs. Rather than keeping their distance and driving away, which anybody with a brain would do, by the way, they turned their car around to get photos. You photograph bears with a telephoto lens. You don't turn your car around to get photos. You drive far away and then you turn around to get photos, and your lens should be as long as your arm. They parked the car between the mother bear and the cubs. Oh my God.
My God.
What? One of the oh, it gets worse, guys.
Finish it.
Then one of them opened the door to get really close to the cubs. Yep. I think both of them survived the attack, but one of them was badly injured and sent to the hospital. Holy fuck.
It's like it's not just, but the video we saw of this couple driving through a tiger enclosure in a safari park, and
no.
the wife got so annoyed with the husband that she just stormed out of the car. And then you actually saw the tiger just grab her and run off.
Oh my God.
Please tell me that was AI.
No, I think this was
Oh,
before.
how could you be that fucking stupid?
Now I don't know. Now I don't even know. Is everything AI now? Oh God.
I hope that was AI, because I mean, I don't want women to be that stupid. I don't want anybody to be that stupid. Like, that is something,
That was
you
real.
learn not to do. Oh God, that was real. That is something that you learn not to do when you're a little kid and your mom says, "Don't touch the stove, it's hot." And you can see that it's red, and you think it's pretty, and you touch it anyway, and you get a scar on your hand. Like that, then you learn that if somebody says something's dangerous, you stay away from it, right? Jeez. What's wrong with people? What's wrong with women? Don't answer that. We'll be here all night.
How many?
How long is the show again?
We're gonna wrap it up here in like 5 minutes. I see in Wowie said women are LLMs without the tools to let them challenge their hallucinations. That was on Rumble. And then Roboto 1234567. All his comments have been on Rumble too. I keep not mentioning that. Gave us $1 and said, I can't put this in the screen. Come on, there we go. Funny thing, in many, not all cultures, women always worked. Yes, they did, with exceptions. So it becomes a matter of big city thinking versus village thinking or small town thinking. Well, it's also class, right? There was an upper class and a lower class. Upper class women only worked if they wanted to. Lower class women worked so that their families wouldn't starve. And a lot of times the work they did was housekeeping for the upper class women who didn't have to work. Or cooking for their families. And even when women did try to do harder jobs, right, upper class women stymied them. For instance, people don't know this, but during the Victorian era, women worked in coal mines until upper class women decided that this was offensive, because it did involve like tearing up their clothes essentially, and so there were jobs that were basically done in the nude, but you're covered in mud, so nobody could see anything anyway. But Queen Victoria sent men in to check on these women, and they evaluated and they decided, on the Queen's behalf, based on the directives that she had given them, that women shouldn't be working in the coal mines. And so the women were relegated to the jobs that could be done on the surface outside the coal mines or inside the cave, but not down in the mines. And only the men would go down. And that was the end of that. So they lost income, and their families lost income. And the impact was pretty bad. But the upper class felt like they had done lower class women a favor because they had rescued them from the mines. And that is the way that it often works. And Roboto 1234567 gave us another $1 and said, would it work better if instead of big expensive weddings, half that money was a gift to start off new marriages like in the older days before now? Yeah, that would work. Not all families even have that kind of money. My family didn't have that kind of money, but if somebody had tried to throw me a big expensive wedding and make me stand up in front of everybody and do all that, I would have probably never been able to get married. That would have killed me. But honestly, the best route, if you're raising a Gen Alpha girl, if you're a parent listening to this right now, and you've got a Gen Alpha girl, right? She should be earning her own dowry from the time she turns 16, when she's old enough to get a job. And, someplace like fast food or retail or something that she can start out and have some upward mobility, but it won't be devastating if she decides she never wants to do that again after she gets married. Right? And put that money away, and every bit that she can, don't go spending it on dates and clothes and makeup and hair and all kinds of bullshit. Even if mom and dad have to manage it for her, put it away. in a trust account that she can't touch until she either gets married or buys a house, or wants to buy a house. And then she can use that as her down payment. And you can earn quite a sizable amount in 6 years between high school and what it would take you to rack up several $1,000s of debt in college. And it'd be better to have that money built up than it would be to rack up that debt, unless she specifically wants to do a job, that you have to get a degree for, like a certification for, like nursing or doctor or something like that, where you can go someplace to work and they'll pay it off for you. I mean, don't let your daughter talk you into just letting her slack off. Sons are working. Most boys get jobs because they got to pay for dates. Talk your son out of doing a lot of dating when he's in high school. Just a little bit. Talk your daughter out of doing a lot of dating when she's in high school. Let them take their time. And let them save that up. It'll make a much bigger difference than having a big fancy wedding and a degree in underwater basket weaving.
Dating is gay in general. It's like a mutual job interview. It's excruciating. Just meet people normally, for fuck's sake.
Oh, I see. And Wowie said that Tiger video came out years before AI Jenner. Oh, it's old. Jesus Pete's became available. Maybe it could be a fabrication from some obscure lab at best. So it's definitely real. Jeez.
She chose the tiger.
She sure did. Well, I guess she learned. Whether she survived it or not, but Xeranx on YouTube gave us, said, member for 21 months, level spore message. I saw that video. I think her mom was in the back seat and tried to save her. I couldn't help but shrug at her plight.
So talking about the bear thing or the tiger thing?
The tiger thing.
Okay.
Senior Sticks gave us $2 and said, don't men pay the dowry? So Shaw had a great video on that. And one of the things he explained is that the direction the dowry goes depends on the direction the woman's value goes. If the husband is taking responsibility for a woman who isn't bringing a laborer into the family or wealth into the family based on some type of skill or something like that, then the family sends a dowry with her. If he's taking responsibility, she brings a dowry. If he's getting a value, if she's bringing value into the family, like if women in societies where women's labor is central to the household and central to the man's ability to gain resources and stuff like that, then he pays a dowry. So it makes a big difference. So there are different societies that do it different ways. A dowry goes both ways. It just depends on what type of civilization you're in. That personally, in civilizations like the United States, the UK, Canada, first world nations, where women do bring skills and everything, but then don't always use them, I still think women should be bringing something into the marriage. Because what happens is you get married, right? If you don't already have, if you haven't already put the cart before the horse, you get married, and maybe for a year or two you work, and both of you are bringing in about the same amount of income, unless you have a huge disparity in your training, what types of jobs you do, and then whoever has the more valued job makes more money most of the time, and that's usually the man, right? So there's the disparity that happens first, and then the next disparity is if the wife gets pregnant, she's going to take maternity leave, and at the end of that maternity leave, she might not want to go back to work. she might take 2 or 3 years off to raise the child up to preschool age before she even goes back part-time. When she does go back, she's not going to make the amount of money she would have made if she'd have been working that whole time. And then the other thing is, she's probably not going to be as hungry for promotion and extra responsibility at work until she's in her 50s. So the whole time that the kids are young, from the day that she has, that positive pregnancy test, right up until all the kids are out of the house and she becomes comfortable with being an empty nester, it's going to be on his shoulders almost the entire time in most households. So knowing that, the one way that a woman can make up for the gap in what she is contributing financially in a world where two-income households are really necessary, is to bring money in at the beginning. And I think it would also make her more likely to stay with the marriage. Maybe sunken cost isn't always a fallacy. If she has invested in their home and their family, she's not going to want to abandon that so quickly. Right? It's something that she's helped to build up, and it's going to be important to her to maintain that connection. Still important to change the law, but there you go. We're going to listen to the last minute, and then I will close out the show. That is why the gap has gotten so fat. Historically, women were sheltered in ways that made it grow, and as men have advanced civilization to remove the necessity of that shelter, the sheltering has become more prevalent and pervasive, not less. That means, even though the accountability gap is in part natural and cannot ever fully be closed, there is still a significant element that is cultural and can be changed. The expansion of the accountability gap is a result of that pattern, and that pattern can be recognized, evaluated, halted, and reversed to return societal standards to a more rational pattern. So this isn't the news of doom and gloom it has sounded like for most of this explanation, but just a major wake-up call. Because if we know the issues, risk aversion, solipsism and scope of contemplation, narcissism and scope of self-awareness, cultural gynocentrism and double standards, then we can fight to get it back down to a more reasonable size and protect men so that when a woman falls into it, she cannot drag one or more of them down with her. In fact, the more we understand this phenomenon, the more we may be able to keep anyone from falling in. It's not a white pill, but it's not a black pill either. I suppose we can call this the one shade of gray pill.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are.
And that's going to be as far as I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, you're talking about how you raise children.
Right.
You teach them accountability. You teach them boundaries. You
Right.
teach them you don't do this to other people because it affects other people. And if you do it enough, eventually they fucking understand it. Like, hopefully. Oh.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. Right? People do have the opportunity to raise the next generation and the next and after better, and to start reversing that trend.
What are we doing next week?
I'm not sure yet, but I will definitely let you know.
Did you
We
look
might.
Did you look for the assisted dying bill?
Not yet. I haven't had a chance, but that's one of the things that's on my plate. It is something that I do want to talk about, and that is going to be an upcoming topic. Suicide primarily, is a decision that people, when they're making it, if they get an opportunity to change their minds, they do. Right. But, if you've got someone else doing it for you, then you don't get that opportunity. So it's very serious that's becoming a thing, and because suicide victims are mostly men, it's entirely a men's issue that this is happening. So, but in any case, it is an upcoming topic. But I'll need to look more through the bill before I try to discuss the actual law intelligently, because I don't know the details.
It's the same thing it's the same one as Canada.
Oh shit, that's really bad. Yeah, and this is not the only country either that's doing this. Like in the Netherlands, they've suicided children, right, who can't even make this decision for themselves yet. Not really. But with that in mind, that's one. There's a couple other things I'm looking at as well. That one's probably going to be more urgent, so I'll try to get a good look at that this weekend.
I'm supposed to go on Paul's show at some point.
That's good. Well, in the meantime,
he hasn't got back to me yet.
Yep. In the meantime, like I said, I will do my best to get a good look at that law. I would like to see if maybe the listeners might also look into that law when we end up talking about it. That way, you'll all be able to, comment on it based on an understanding of the law. But you'd have to look it up. You can. I hate to suggest Google, but I'm sure you can find it that way. Or if you happen to have an X account, Grok is pretty good at finding things when Google won't look them up. I've discovered that as well. So, but thanks, Richard, for reminding me of that. Thanks to all my co-hosts for doing the show tonight, especially like Mike and Lauren are doing this right in the middle of travel. Thanks very much to Brian for working in the background to make this happen. What law exactly? Lycophobic misanthrope. It's the assisted dying law that's it's under consideration, right? It's not passed.
No, it's getting its fifth try this month.
Oh, geez, Pete. Yeah, I'm gonna talk about that too, because that's a tactic. In the UK, the assisted dying law in the UK, or bill in the UK. Good night, all.
Men's right activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.